The year is 2004. You've just finished your first ever playthrough of Pokemon Leaf Green on the best handheld console that was or ever will be released, Game Boy Advanced SP. The Elite Four was challenging. I mean, come on, your age is still in the single digits, and your child IQ isn't that much higher. It's been a long road trip, and there's still a ways to go before you get home. You want to challenge yourself, so you look through your Game Boy case for your copy of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Cards, and alas, it wasn't there. To your chagrin, all you find is Tetris. Once you get home, you're in for the search of your lifetime, because it could be anywhere.
Why did they vanish? I have asked the plants, but they do not remember. The plants have asked the rocks, but the rocks do not recall. Even the rocks do not recall.
Introducing Game Boy.
And Brandon Anderson.
Nintendo, the company synonymous with cases and litigation, also has a problem with cases, and I don't have a rhyme that makes sense here, so you ever want to organize your Nintendo games, but the case has just vanished? Or better yet, you have the case, and the game is nowhere to be found? Well, you're not alone, but Nintendo cases usually are. Nintendo has always been the odd man out when it comes not only to the delivery of their consoles and the various gimmicks that come with them, but also their method of storing media. That is, if you ignore the Wii and the Wii U, because they kind of just had normal CD style discs for like an entire 2 generations. That being said, they were the most out of the box consoles of their generations, especially the Wii. It was so out of the box, in fact, that by the end of the generation, people were using them as doorstops. Today, we are going to explore what has made Nintendo so different and the reasons I believe their cartridges are so often divorced from their cases. Oh, and a quick side note, I was doing research for this topic, and when I was searching up the following phrase, why do Nintendo? The first result was, why do Nintendo cartridges taste bad? I have a question for you. Why are you tasting the video games? Why are you doing that? My review isn't going to be that in-depth, so I'm sorry if you were expecting me to just sit in my car and eat some Switch cartridges. I'm sure you can find that somewhere else. Now, back to the video. It's possible that you've been an especially responsible Nintendo gamer, and that over the course of your life, you've never misplaced your cartridge, even though they can be measured in the millimeters. I'm looking at you, Switch. Even if this is the case, you must be all too aware that the majority of used Nintendo games for sale, both online and at secondhand stores, especially those from the earlier generation of consoles, are often sold loose. Nintendo, unlike its competitors, had decided up until the GameCube era that gamers weren't interested in preserving their gaming collections. I mean, come on, the target audience was literal children. In the 1990s, companies like Sega and Sony released their console games in hard plastic cases, but not Nintendo. Cardboard, baby! If I went back in time and I told you in the 90s, yes, you, person watching between the ages of 25 and 34, that the cardboard box your Nintendo game came in could exceed the value of the game itself, you'd be laughing, but I'd be right. There are multiple listings up right now for the OEM N64 game boxes that exceed the value of the game raw. Nintendo has a long history of using cardboard from the inception of their cartridges all the way up until the N64. They would even keep using cardboard for their handheld until the DS. So why? Why would they do that? It was cheap. Did you really expect a longer answer than that? Could have also helped that the games themselves would have stood out more on the shelves as they took up way more room than was necessary. The cardboard box was just a piece of advertising. This is especially true when looking back at the 64-bit era when Nintendo's competitors like the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation were using disc cases that took up significantly less real estate in the video game aisle. Nintendo's games took up more room, thus they attracted more attention. Nintendo really just expected you to get home from the grocery store and immediately throw the cardboard out, which in most cases just happened. As a kid, when I got a new game for the Game Boy Advanced, I would take it out of its cardboard prison and promptly throw it in the recycling, because that is what Toby, the recycling bin, would have wanted. Aside from just being cheap, if you think about it, did the games Nintendo released until the GameCube even really need a case? Really, think about it. Even with a case, how many PlayStation 1 titles did your idiot child self scratch up until they were unplayable? Now think about your Game Boy games. I found this copy of Pokemon neon fire red at the bottom of a cardboard box stuffed in my parents' basement. It wasn't even in a case, and it boots up right away, no issue. Nintendo made bricks, and those bricks just so happen to play video games. The cheaper ones you'll find secondhand often just sit in a bin, piled on top of each other, getting rummaged through every so often, and perfectly playable over 2 decades later. Nintendo cartridges, Game Boy Advance games in particular, are like the potatoes of the video game world. You treat them like shit, you keep them in the dark, and you forget about them until you need them again. Once the GameCube came out, Nintendo started to phase out their tradition of having you recycle your game's box, instead beginning to favor the industry standard of plastic DVD style cases up until the Switch. And aside from the GameCube game's small size leading to discs also becoming lost by disorganized idiots like myself, Nintendo games were finally united with a solid case. Except they weren't. Did you have a hard time finding Game Boy Advance games? Let's make those even smaller. We had to wait until the DS for Nintendo's handhelds to grace us with a physical case. Not that that helped. I cannot, to this day, find a single Nintendo DS game I own in its case, if I can still find the case at all. I have found cases, and guess what's in them? Here's a hint, not a fucking game. This is true for the 3DS as well. I found Animal Crossing, but the case just, it exists in the aether, it's gone. I would chalk this up to being irresponsible, but due to the overwhelming number of second-hand games coming raw, I know you've done this too. When I said earlier that Nintendo stands alone, I meant it. It's a developer whose consoles are marketed for the whole family. More than that, the handheld consoles, which no other company is even bothering to compete with after the PS Vita, are designed with mobility in mind. If you're on that long road trip using streetlights to see the screen on your Game Boy without a backlight because turning on the light inside your parents' car is illegal or whatever, you probably brought more than one game with you. This is true with every single handheld Nintendo console except for maybe the Switch, which I'll get to at the end. So, what was the solution to this portability conundrum? Well, I believe the solution to this portability issue is also the main culprit behind all those missing game cases: peripherals. Nintendo didn't come out of the gate with any online service or microtransactions. Are you kidding me? Those were years away. No.
You asked me if I was in the
Games.
business or the money business. I'm in the
Accessories.
business.
Nintendo is a weird-ass company, alright? Sure, you could play the NES, but have you ever considered playing the NES with a robot buddy? Is your hunting game not that interesting? Here's a gun. Shoot your screen. Kill some ducks, we don't care. Nice NES. Have you considered bundling that with a fucking sniper scope? Tired of boring old controllers? This controller is also a super awesome sick power glove. You should wear that to school tomorrow. You like Donkey Kong, but feel limited by the GameCube controller? Never fear, because DK Bongos are here. Ever want to take the worst photo ever? Game Boy camera and printer, now on store shelves. Do you treat your Pokemon cards like absolute shit? Good. Use the e-reader and destroy your Skyridge Crystal Charizard so you can upload it to your Game Boy. Hey kid, you like the Wii? We got Wii guns, we got tennis rackets, we got bows, ping pong paddles, boat oars, golf clubs, steering wheels, endless steering wheels. Oh, and one last thing. You know those games we just sold you? Well, you want to buy a case for those? You want to buy a case? Yeah, we got you. Took a bit, but we did it. The entire point of this video, I hold a deep, unshakable belief that Nintendo, for as long as they could, didn't sell games with cases, because they could just sell you a pouch and slap Nintendo on it. It travels great, it has a little pocket for your games, but it won't fit all of them. You have to leave some of those games at home. Finding them when you get home? Well, that's the issue. If that wasn't the issue, then leaving your games at some random relative's house or in the back pouch of your parents' car most certainly was. Did you ever have an SD card for a camera that just seemingly disappears only for you to find it one day stuffed into the side pouch of the camera's travel case? If only it was that simple for DS games. To this day, out of the dozens of games I owned at one point or another, all I can find is a solitary copy of Mystery Case Files Millionaire. Oh, and in case you were wondering, no, there wasn't a case. I think what I'm trying to say say is that Nintendo's aftermarket peripherals were great fun and offered a solution for sorting out your games as you traveled, but it came with a major downside. That downside being, you never kept any of your DS games in their factory cases. We've gotta come full circle with the necessity of the case now. Picture this, you've just come home from a long road trip and you empty your filled up game case. When you left earlier, it was filled to its maximum capacity, but when you get home, you realize you're missing a game. Now you're left with an empty case. Do you A, keep the case, which now it doesn't have a game to go with it, or B, you throw it out like some worthless cardboard just for the game to pop up in a drawer 3 years later down the line because you never even brought it. It's fun to look back and reflect on the games and systems that helped shape our childhoods. Today, this isn't really an issue. I can't believe that people are still losing their games the same way that we might have as kids. Kids today are just playing Fortnite anyway, so like, there's no disc. The release of the Switch bridged the gap between Nintendo's split focus on a handheld and a home console, because now you can sit on the couch or take it to go. Sure, owning the physical copy of a game is always going to carry more value, but when you have mandatory downloads regardless, there's going to be a convenience to owning digital. On top of that, you always have your digital games with you. Xbox is a great example for where I believe the future of gaming is going. Less physical copies and more subscription-based services like Game Pass. That may not be the brightest future, but it is the most convenient, and that's really what people want. If they didn't, they wouldn't be so successful. Nintendo already has this for the Switch, and I would be shocked if it didn't get more fleshed out and promoted for the new generation when it releases. Although I'm upset that I may never see some of my favorite games in physical form again, and the nostalgia of hunting them down is placed solidly in the past, please take some solace in the fact that Nintendo will never stop making peripherals. They already have a steering wheel for the new Switch, for God's sake. It just got announced. I'm really looking forward to flesh out a few more video ideas I have planned out for the future, and if you're interested in more uploads or you just like the channel, I just want to say thanks for the support, and if you want to see any more uploads in the future, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Until next time, keep your cartridges safe and take care. Bye.
American House Hippo.
Obey me.